expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy.
Okay, so tonight we're going to be talking about Klaus Schwab's pipeline of future dictators. But if you want to skip right to that topic, you're going to have to start the video at this timestamp. To start though, I want to talk to you about something else. And I am going to have to dodge the censors with this one. I'll do my best to limit the edits, but you'll understand why I have to do this. So over the holidays, I was speaking with someone. And of course, after a while, the conversation naturally transitioned into the taboo subject of modern day politics. So basically, they asked me if I really believe that this thing was released on purpose, and if it's really possible. Now, it's not that simple, and I don't think I did a very good job of explaining it. I think I left some things out and I went too deep too fast. As with everything, this is not simple. These are complicated geopolitical affairs and, well, corruption. So I think it might be a good idea to think it through, and I want to know what you think about it too. The way I see it, we have a few possibilities. I came up with 4 options, 4 truths, or 4 realities. And as far as I can tell, there's only one that can be taken off the list, and it's the one the establishment pushes incessantly. The other 3 options are possible. So let me know if you think I'm way off base, or if you have a different scenario in mind to add to the list. So these are the possibilities. Number 1, this thing is naturally occurring, and it's simply spread around the world from the wet market. Option number 2, it leaked. A controversial research project that was previously discontinued in the US was brought back to life, and it was outsourced through grants and funding programs from the NIH to China, where lax protocols or mistakes took place, and well, we all got fucked. As a result of this, the never let a good crisis go to waste philosophy kicked in, and well, here we are, mid-Great Reset and global overhaul towards authoritarian systems. And of course, a new digital iron curtain shielding people from reality. But then we have option number 3. So the US military completed war simulations with China back in 2018 and 2019, where they indicated World War III started with a biological attack. The simulation essentially described exactly what happened at the beginning of this thing, with our warships being taken out and sidelined due to outbreaks. This leads to economic warfare and posturing, which leads us towards total war, actual kinetic warfare in the near future. And then we have option number 4. The greedy politicians within both political parties here in the US, realizing that their economic policies of Keynesian principles and, well, damn near a decade of quantitative easing, well, this destroyed the viability of the dollar. And the entire globe is looking at complete monetary collapse. Due to this, they worked with international groups like G7, G20, Davos, or the World Economic Forum to concoct a plan to initiate the Great Reset. So this set them on a path towards complete control, merging government powers with corporate powers, and using the private sector of big tech as the control mechanisms for populations. However, they needed a catalyst event. Something to get the ball rolling. They needed the economy to be shut down, people to remain in place. They wanted to limit Mad Max-style madness in the streets, and then they could tie everything up with a nice bow and ribbon by using the media as the propaganda arm.
Anderson Cooper 360, brought to you by Pfizer.
ABC News Nightline, brought to you by Pfizer.
Now, they needed to instill enough fear to enable the switch to a new digital economy, one that offers limitless growth and limits checks and balances on their power. So through this crisis, they were able to create a scenario that elections are dictated through mass mail-in things. Look, I'm trying to avoid censorship here. Well, anyway, this allows their plans to continue unimpeded. This is done via ensuring the quote-unquote right candidate wins. And through their mass campaign to get every single person this health pass, well, this would give them the opportunity to get the majority of the world's population linked into this digital ID, which is the main aspect to the fulfillment of their new economy. Everything is linked to this digital identity. It is the linchpin in their entire plan, which is exactly why we saw things like this. We just need to get to the 70% marker, the 80% marker, 85%, 90%, 95%. Now they want everyone. It's not about your health. It's about getting linked to a digital ID. Now, if we go with these possibilities, we can even understand why this specific illness was chosen. It is one that isn't really that deadly, so they don't have to worry about mass death. But it is enough to instill enough fear, allowing enough time to reset the economy by 2030. Look, there is a reason why this specific version was chosen to be manipulated through the infamous gain-of-function experiments. Again, we have the funding documents to prove it. So, those are the 4 possibilities that I came up with as our options for this thought experiment. Number 2 and number 4 are directly linked together. It could be that US politicians were not involved in the creation of this crisis, but they know their past economic policies are leading us towards monetary collapse. So, you never let a good crisis go to waste, and they see this as a path towards the new system. Look, we know the funding of this took place through NIH and Eco Alliance. We have the receipts. We have the program funding documents. We know this took place. And we know that Fauci lied about it to Congress. Changing the definition does not negate reality, despite how many times the media lies to you. So as stated, we know for a fact that this was not natural, and it was actually funded and created through government programs. So we can take option 1 off the table. So the other option, the World War III angle. This is definitely possible. As we know, on October 18th, 2019, the military games in China took place in, any guesses? Wuhan. And that's not all. China actually stopped domestic flights in China, but they allowed international flights to leave. So, I don't believe it's a stretch to contemplate if this is exactly when it was released. We have to keep in mind that China has their own agenda, Agenda 2049. It is their global plan of dominance. It ties into one belt, one road. And, can't forget, surmounting the US as the world's superpower. We also know that China has multiple strategies for war that do not include kinetic warfare. They believe that they can win wars through information, propaganda, and economic warfare. The current predicament we find ourselves in would also be the catalyst in those plans as well. Now, this is where things get strange. So, Event 201 actually happened on that same date, the same day as the Wuhan Games, October 18th, 2019. So this event took place in New York City, and as a simulation, they used a corona model that originated in, any guesses? Yeah, bats. How coincidental. Do you see where things are starting to get a little bit murky? This was an event put on by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the World Economic Forum, and Johns Hopkins. The control methods that they hashed out during this simulation were actually utilized during the real outbreak, down to the media stories, the suppression of speech on social media, and even the narrative surrounding compliance. It's all in their documents. Now, one might say, of course, that's why they simulated the situation, so they could plan out an appropriate response to a crisis. That's true, don't get me wrong. But for all the people that believe this is a conspiracy theory, the timing of this doesn't cause you any pause. The same moment that the military games took place in Wuhan, China, the simulation took place in the US, and it used the exact same illness. I don't know, that's just a little too on the nose for me. Who knew Bill Gates is a prophet? Or, the other possibility is that they knew, because they knew they were funding the very program to develop the very illness that they were simulating. And oh shit, I don't think YouTube's gonna like this video very much. But that's why we're on Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, and now RoxyTube as well. So if anything does happen, make sure you come find me over there. Now, I was also asked, what would be the reason behind doing this? Why would they want to do this? Well, as I said, complete monetary collapse is a pretty powerful motivator, don't you think? Through their corruption, they have destroyed the fiat system. They have been printing money, robbing the middle and lower classes, and manipulating markets to line their own pockets for so long that there is no way out. They essentially have decided that the only logical step is to throw out the entire system and start again. What better way to consolidate power and ensure that they remain in power then developing a new system that can never be toppled by their constituents, even when we know it's corrupt. They are insulating themselves. However, it could also be tied into the election from 2016. They realized that through the use of social media and new technologies, that people are realizing the game. People are realizing that this is all rigged. It's all a facade. Political theater meant to keep us fighting, while they make it out the back door holding the bag of cash. No matter what you think of Trump, whether you like him or hate him, whether you're an independent, a Republican, a Democrat, a socialist, a conservative, a communist, or a libertarian, we all know that this system is rigged. I mean, just look at the stock market. What the hedge funds are doing to people that are investing in AMC, GameStop. I mean, this is so rigged. But that's not all. The media, the justice system, all of our institutions, our intel agencies, all of it. And more people are realizing this every day. We also know that the establishment claimed that they could never let this happen again. No more outsiders. I mean, we even had this headline from the Washington Post, and I quote, "Let the elites have a bigger say in electing presidents." And we can't forget the infamous article from Time magazine, how a cabal of elites saved the 2020 election. I mean, they admit to all of their collusion in that article. It is truly crazy that they even came out with that. But they couldn't help themselves. They want to brag about their accomplishments. Their accomplishment of destroying trust in the system. Well, anyway, this perpetual crisis will inevitably affect our elections until they are finished with their reset. They do not want to have people realize what is happening and then elect someone who will change the trajectory. There's even more, though. Career politicians do not want to leave their positions. This is their identity, a corrupt bureaucrat. If you take away their positions, well, then their left is just some corrupt asshole, and they can't have that. So it's twofold. It allows them to remain in power, and allows them to transition to a new system where they literally control the economy through various new technologies and can manipulate things to their benefit. Now, when I say that out loud, that sounds exactly like the old system, but this one offers even more control. Less transparency, if you can even imagine that. We don't even have transparency now. But it's through their tracking and surveillance of both personal and financial dealings of US citizens that they can extract more tax dollars from everyone. If you add the new taxes from the quote-unquote sustainable economy, such as carbon taxes, well again, it equals more cash for politicians. Ultimately, this merges the government with special interests, consolidates power, limits checks and balances on their power. I mean, it's a win-win-win-win for the corrupt. Now, I kind of went off into the weeds there, but we also have to keep in mind that this global governance concept has been in the works for a long time. Essentially, since the conception of the UN. They want a global infrastructure, a true global hegemony. It equals more wealth, business opportunity. Well, I should rephrase that. More opportunities to exploit people for profit. The global government concept is all about streamlining their rackets and ensuring the class-based system remains. And I mean, I know, they always try to say that the goal is to offset the wealth inequality, but every single move they make increases it. We are currently in, right now, the largest wealth transfer in history from the lower and middle classes to the top 1%. And I guess the overarching theme to all of this is greed. People always say, what motivation would they have to do this? Well, I could give you billions, hell trillions of reasons. They are turning every single human being into a perpetual walking ATM. If they create a system that every human on Earth, over 7 billion people, have to get a certain medication every 6 months, forever, well, that's taking the concept of creating a whole new revenue stream to a whole new level. For example, Bill Gates has already made over $200 billion from this thing. I mean, that's quite an ulterior motive. And if the Great Reset happens, there will be zero accountability for their crimes. I mean, as if we get that now. However, there is one outlying coincidence that has been on my mind recently. Every single person who is running this situation, this transition to a new economy, and are running the responses to the actual illness, are all people who have come from Klaus Schwab's pipeline. Klaus Schwab's school of future leaders. So this same person that I was talking about earlier asked me another question. How Pete Buttigieg went from mayor of a small town to where he is, and why he was getting nods for presidential consideration. Well, coincidentally, he also went to Klaus Schwab's Leader program. How coincidental indeed. Now, I saw a post from someone on Twitter, I don't remember who, but they claim that Klaus Schwab was also just a pawn being used by the ones who are really running the show. I would imagine they mean people like the Rothschilds or the Rockefeller families, things like that. While those families do have an outsized role in the Great Reset through their ownership in places like BlackRock and Vanguard, which those companies are collecting the world's assets at record pace, well, I don't think he is just a pawn. I personally believe that he might be in the top tier of this malevolent force. And the reason why I believe this is because of this pipeline of future yes men. Well, anyway, the stage is proverbially set. So let's get into the Future Global Leaders School. So this is actually from an interview of Ernst Wolff by the Rare Foundation, and I'll leave a link in the description. So in 1992, Schwab established a parallel institution called the Global Leaders for Tomorrow School, which in 2004 was re-established as the Young Global Leaders. Attendees at the school must apply for admission and are then subjected to a rigorous selection process. Members of the school's very first class in 1992 already included many who went on to become important political figures, such as Angela Merkel, Nicolas Sarkozy, and Tony Blair.
Also be done for travel. Double vaccinated, it should be much easier to come in and out of the country. And indeed, round the world, I think you will find that countries start to distinguish between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. I was then, I remain even more convinced today, particularly with biometric technology, the world will move to biometric ID, and they'll do it because in the end it's better for people.
There are currently about 1,300 graduates from this school, and the list of alumni includes several names of those who went on to become leaders of the health institutions of their respective nations. 4 of them are former or current health ministers for Germany, including Jens Spahn, who has been the federal minister of health since 2018. This also includes Philip Rossler, who was the Minister of Health from 2009 until 2011, and he was actually appointed as the World Economic Forum's managing director by Klaus Schwab in 2014. So other notable names on the school's roster are Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, who is crazy, and she has some of the strictest lockdown measures in the world. And again, she is praised by the global health authorities for her authoritarianism.
Well, it's almost like, you probably don't see it like this, the 2 different classes of people. If you're vaccinated or if you're unvaccinated, you have all these rights. If you are vaccinated...
That is what it is, so yep.
So other notable names include Emmanuel Macron, the President of France, Sebastian Kurz, who was until recently the Chancellor of Austria, Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, Jean-Claude Juncker, the former Prime Minister of Luxembourg and the President of the European Commission. Now, this also includes Annalena Baerbock, the leader of the German Greens, and she was the party's first candidate for Chancellor in this year's federal election, and she is still in the running to be Merkel's successor. I mean, the list of people who have come from Klaus Schwab's pipeline of dictators is insane. We also find California Governor Gavin Newsom on this list, who was selected for the class of 2005, as well as former presidential candidate and current U.S. Secretary of Transportation, Pete "the Bridges Are Racist" Buttigieg. Now, he is a very recent alumni, having been selected for the class of 2019. Now, all of these politicians who were in office during the past 2 years have favored harsh responses to the pandemic, and all of those measures that they backed increased their respective government power. But the school's list of alumni is not limited to political leaders. We also find many captains of private industry there, including Microsoft's Bill Gates and Amazon's Jeff Bezos, Virgin's Richard Branson, and even Chelsea Clinton. But that's not all, though. Other people include Alexander Soros, Tulsi Gabbard, Dan Crenshaw, Mark Zuckerberg, David D. Rothschild, and even Megan Rapinoe. Again, all of them expressed the support for the global response to this illness, and many many of these people reaped considerable profits as a result of this authoritarianism. You know, there are some people who believe that the people behind the World Economic Forum and the Global Leaders School are the ones who really determine who will become political leaders. It's also worth noting that the school's alumni does not include only Americans and Europeans, but also people from Asia, Africa, and South America, indicating that its reach is truly worldwide. In 2012, Schwab and the World Economic Forum founded yet another institution, the Global Shapers Community, which brings together those identified by them as having leadership potential from around the world, but they have to be under 30 years old. Approximately 10,000 participants have passed through this program to date, and they hold meetings regularly in 400 cities. So, we essentially have 10,000 Manchurian candidates waiting to be activated and used as de facto dictators. Perfect. Real cool. This is basically just a proving ground where future political leaders are being selected, vetted, and groomed before being positioned in the world's political apparatus. Now, one interesting aspect is that very few graduates of the Global Leaders School actually list it on their resumes. I mean, I guess they don't want people to realize the power this school wields on global politics. This is the proving ground, the grooming station of yes men. And coincidentally, all of the people ruining the world come from this lineage. And one thing that the Global Leaders graduates have in common is that most of them have very sparse resumes, apart from their participation in the program prior to being elevated to positions of power, which may actually indicate that it is this connection to Schwab's institutions that is the decisive factor in launching their careers. So I mean, graduates from the Young Global Leaders School and Global Leaders for Tomorrow, well, they find themselves very well situated given that they have access to the World Economic Forum's network of contacts. They have access to some of the most wealthy individuals, and they all seem to work together to implement the overall agenda. I mean, the World Economic Forum's current board of trustees includes such luminaries as Christine Lagarde, who was the former managing director of the International Monetary Fund, and she is the current president of the European Central Bank. They have access to kings and queens, and of course, Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, the largest investment management corporation internationally, and which handles approximately $9 trillion annually. By tracing these connections between the school's graduates, it is apparent that they continue to rely on each other for support for their initiatives long after they participated in the Global Leaders program. I mean, that kind of reminds me of Skull and Bones. All of the people in that secret society, that fraternity, they make the connections while they're in college, and then when they get out, they all give each other jobs, and they all have that secret together. It kind of holds the whole thing in place. Now, many believe that many elite universities play a role in the process determined by the World Economic Forum, and they should no longer be seen as operating outside of the fields of politics and economics. He cites the example of Harvard Business School, which receives millions and millions of dollars from donors each year. I mean, the same thing is true of Johns Hopkins, which became Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, after media mogul Michael Bloomberg donated $1.8 billion to the school in 2018. And as we know, Johns Hopkins is deeply involved in World Economic Forum activities as well as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So I guess the main goal of the World Economic Forum's activities is to facilitate and further high-level cooperation between big business and national governments, something of which we are already seeing take place. Again, that is fascism. That's literally the definition of it. We are seeing the rise of the Fourth Reich, global fascism. And the troubling aspect is the fact that most don't even know what fascism is. They just know it as some sort of buzzword. The people, the ones who blindly support these initiatives, the average voter, they don't realize that they're helping install a fascist system. Another troubling aspect is the fact that BlackRock, run by Global Leaders alumni Larry Fink, is presently the largest advisor to the world's central banks, and he has been collecting data on the world's financial systems for more than 30 years. And undoubtedly, he has a greater understanding of how the system works than the central banks themselves. I mean, I think it's pretty easy to see that one of the goals of the current policies being pursued by many governments is to destroy the businesses of small and medium-sized entrepreneurs so that multinational corporations based in the United States and China can monopolize business everywhere. Amazon, which was led by Global Leaders alumni Jeff Bezos, has made enormous profit as a result of the lockdown measures that have devastated the middle class. But the ultimate goal of this domination by large platforms is to see the introduction of a digital bank currency. Just in the past few months, China's International Finance Forum, which is similar to the World Economic Forum, proposed the introduction of the digital yen, which could, in turn, be internationalized by the DM blockchain-based currency network. Interestingly, DM is the successor to Libra, a cryptocurrency that was first announced by Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, indicating that a global currency will transcend the power of either the dollar or the yen, and managed through the cooperation of Chinese, European, and American business networks, is currently being discussed. I mean, we have talked about past economic policies that led us to this moment, but the lockdowns and subsequent bailouts that we're seeing around the world over the past 2 or 3 years left many nations on the verge of bankruptcy. In order to avoid an economic catastrophe, the governments of the world took out massive loans, and they even resorted to drawing on 650 billion special drawing rights, or SDRs, which are supplementary foreign exchange reserve assets, which again are managed by the International Monetary Fund. When these eventually become due, it will leave these same governments in dire straits, which is why it may be that the introduction of a digital currency has become a sudden priority. But this may actually be, and I personally believe it is, this has been the purpose of the lockdowns all along. It's about the new digital economy and linking everyone to a digital ID.
And I think you will find right round the world that people move in this direction because it will facilitate the access to government services. And by the way, in some of the developing countries, the thing is about biometric ID. I mean, as you know, my view is the whole world's getting changed by technology. The big political debate we should be having, we're not really having it, is how do you master this technology and harness it for the public good? But in every single field of our work, our leisure, the way we interact with each other, technology is going to change everything. So, you know, biometric ID is just one part of a much, much bigger picture. Face this situation in the future, we're going to have to create a global infrastructure to deal with future pandemics, because I think what has happened to us is probably part of a change that is going to be just normal life for the foreseeable future.
Interestingly, now this is crazy. There are 2 European countries who are already preparing to begin using digital currency. That's Sweden and Switzerland. Now, perhaps this is not a coincidence. Sweden has had virtually no lockdown restrictions due to the pandemic, and Switzerland has taken only very light measures. Could the reason for that actually be that these 2 countries did not need to crash their economies through lockdown measures because they were already preparing to begin using digital currency, and they were preparing to do that before the pandemic even began? I mean, one might contend that a new round of lockdowns is being prepared, and that's to finish off the world's economies for good, leading to massive unemployment, and in turn, the introduction of universal basic income, but also the use of a digital currency managed by a central bank. This currency is definitely going to be restricted, both in terms of what individuals can spend it on, as well as the time frame that one has to spend it in. They will tie it to a social credit score, medical surveillance, biometrics, and they will determine your ability to participate in said system based on your compliance to their tyranny. They are also developing mechanisms to mold behavior by giving rewards in cryptocurrency. This is a dystopian nightmare. I mean, if you can't see how that's going to turn into a dystopian nightmare, I don't know what to tell you. The ultimate conclusion one must draw from all of this is that democracy as we know it has been silently canceled, and that although the appearance of democratic processes is being maintained in our countries, the fact is that an examination of how governance around the world works today shows that an elite group of super wealthy and powerful individuals effectively control everything that goes on in politics. and this has been especially evident in relation to the pandemic. Now, Ernst Wolff believes the best way to combat their designs is to simply educate people about what is happening, and for them to realize that they are being lied to. All of this is designed to manipulate them into accepting things that run contrary to their own interests. If even 10% of ordinary citizens become aware of this and decide to take action, it could thwart their entire plan, and perhaps even open a window for ordinary citizens to take back control over their own destinies. I think it's quite evident that most people have no real idea how the world really works. So many believe that these quote-unquote leaders are independent, doing what they believe to be best. But I believe this guy, Ernst Wolff, may be correct. In fact, I believe he is correct. It appears that all of these people who are elevated into positions of power, well, they have all come from Klaus Schwab's school of global leaders. And they just act as the mouthpieces, the frontmen, for the real operation being conducted in the shadows. They select young people under 30 who have, as they call it, potential leadership qualities. And once they're finished being indoctrinated, they are out there moving the agenda along. We are getting close to the point of no return. However, the amount of pushback that is happening is clearly affecting their plans. We can see the cracks beginning to form. The foundation of their agenda is beginning to crumble. I can see a way out. We just need to collectively stand up against these draconian measures, this tyrannical agenda, and push back against this dystopian nightmare that is being created. No matter how fast darkness may travel, the light may always be there to meet it. Truth is light, and information is a weapon. We can do something about this. Anyway, once again, if you like the content, like, comment, and subscribe. Share the video if you want to, but make sure you disobey those true fascistas. Until next time, as always, I hope you have a good night.